I'm Morgan, co-founder and CEO of Bold Metrics. I'm really excited to talk to you today about a scalable approach to building a 3D avatar library of your customer body data. Let's dive in. Like they said, really excited to take your questions. So as I'm going through slides, if questions come up, post them in there. I want to make sure to leave more than enough time to hopefully answer every question that you have. With that, let's jam. So, first off, I just want to frame the problem, and this is something that we all know very well, which is, very, very hard for a shopper to find the right size online. Looking at a size chart usually doesn't really cut it. They don't have a measuring tape. They're not going to measure themselves. And it ends up being a pretty poor experience for shoppers and for brands and for technical designers. So for everybody. And this means that you have actually a 30% average return rate online. And actually 50% of those returns are due to challenges with fit and sizing. And where does this all come from? Well, a lot of this has to do with consumer sizing uncertainty, but a lot of this starts actually with a limited amount of data that technical designers have when they're designing their garments. And so, for a long time, we've been looking at statistical studies and fit models and dress forms. And I think technical designers do the best with what they have of trying to figure out, okay, who's wearing my clothes? Who wears, a size medium or a size large, and then grading the pattern from there. The challenge is this is limited information and there's no feedback loop. So in the end, we were actually talking to a brand that was actually sharing their frustration with this. And they said, we go through this great length to try to guess who our customer is. And then we put the clothes out there and we never know if that's who actually bought it or not. We see ourselves powering a new world where AI body scanning can actually enable brands to understand who they're making clothes for and adjust their designs based on the customers that are buying them and how they like to wear those clothes. And this is the impact of a lack of consumer body data. What ends up happening is you really hurt size inclusivity, and we're seeing this become a bigger and bigger issue today. This is a totally staggering statistic here. In America, most clothing above a size 14 is considered plus size, but a research study came out and said actually 68% of US women are size 14 or above. And so there's a big disconnect here between who we're making clothes for and who's actually buying those clothes. And we believe that we're moving into a time where we're really going to be able to use AI to power sizing inclusivity and make it a much better experience, both for consumers and for the technical designers that are making those clothes. And then, all this comes back to something that is, such an important topic to us at Bold Metrics, and I think to all of us here, which is, the impact that the apparel industry has on the environment and on the world. And it's also something that consumers care a lot about. And so, what happens when a consumer returns clothes online? Well, the reality is that most of it actually ends up in a landfill or an incinerator, which is crazy to think about, especially if you think of the entire path of all the water that goes into making the clothes and all the pollutants that the factories are outputting and all the pollution and CO2 emissions from shipping. And then, you go through all of this, it gets to the consumer and the consumer goes, I don't like this size. And they return it thinking, oh, this is going to just go back out into circulation. And in fact, 88% of consumers think that returns are just resold, but that's not true. Actually, over 80% of clothing that's returned ends up in a landfill or an incinerator. And this means we actually have 5 billion pounds of landfill waste generated annually from apparel returns, and 15 million metric tons of CO2 contributed to the atmosphere just from returns. And so, we think that a scalable, practical approach to body measurement capture is going to make a huge impact, both in allowing brands and technical designers to design products that are much more inclusive of their entire customer base, but also can dramatically reduce return rates so that we're lessening the impact that we have on the environment. And we're doing this all through accurate AI body scans. This is our expertise. We've been doing it for 8 years. And we do this in a really simple, seamless way that's frictionless for the consumer and for the brand. And we're doing all of the AI and ML under the hood to make it all possible. And so on the front end, a consumer just is answering 4 to 7 easy to answer questions. These are things like height, weight, jean waist, age, shoe size, sometimes things about their body, like what's your posture like? Do you have a bigger belly or smaller belly? Do you like a classic fit or a slim fit? But these are all questions that a consumer can answer usually in 15 to 20 seconds. And then that goes into a solution we have called the virtual tailor. And this is essentially what produces our AI body scan. And so you have 8 years of high quality 3D body scan training data, over 100 million data points. What we're outputting is over 50 body measurements, and these are highly accurate algorithmic body scans. And so if you think about it, if I'm trying to buy a button-down shirt, but I've been buying from a brand that sizes those in small, medium, large, I might not know my collar or my sleeve or my chest. And so when I go to an e-com site and I look at their size chart, I see collar, sleeve, chest, and waist. And I go, oh, all I know is my waist. Well, that's not a great measurement to base the decision on buying a shirt with. And so what we're able to do is, take the answers to these questions. Hey, I know my height, I know my weight, I know my jean waist, I know my age, I know my shoe size. I know that I like a little more slim fit. And take that data in, and then our AI body scan can allow brands and consumers to access all of that data. So you understand, chest circumference, shoulder width, bicep circumference, thigh circumference, all that data that you can do to really ensure great fit. And question we get all the time, I think over the last 8 years, we probably have gotten this question every single day, which is, how is that possible? How are you just taking in answers to these simple questions and getting, really accurate AI body scans out of it? And so a lot of times people want to test it. They want to prove it out. So we've done a ton of different studies. We've got amazing partners all over the world, and we have really great proven results around the accuracy of our AI body scans. And so we've been proven to come within 0.78% when compared to a 3D body scanner. That's 5.58 millimeters. When you compare this to a tailor that's doing hand measurements, which, in the past has been kind of the gold standard, they actually come within, on average, a 5% difference when compared to a body scanner. That's 14.98 millimeters. And so for us, we're also looking at, accuracy and scalability. When you're looking at somebody measuring, or if you're looking at somebody taking a photograph and trying to get measurements from a photograph, those are two things that have a lot of margin for error. Because if I'm measuring somebody, if someone's breathing in or out, the measurement can change. If someone's taking a photograph, if they're not wearing tight-fitted clothing, that can degrade the accuracy. And so for us, we're looking at how do we make it seamless for the shopper while also making it highly, highly scalable, so you can have 10,000, 10 million, or 100 million people go through the system and continue to get consistent, accurate AI body scan data. And really good example of this in action is one of my favorite clients of ours, Blue Delta. They use us for custom men and women's jeans. And for those of you that have been in technical design and designing this, this is a tricky one to get right. When you're looking at jeans, women's jeans a lot of times is worn tighter, and you have to make sure you get the fit just right. And so they're using our virtual tailor to actually take in this data and then produce all the body data using our AI body scans to then make that final garment. And just have a great quote from Josh, the CEO of Blue Delta. He said, "We required 16 body measurements from every client to make a pair of bespoke jeans. And these measurements were taken in person using a measuring tape. Now, with the Bold Metrics Virtual Tailor, we collect these same measurements from anyone, anywhere, anytime, and have full confidence that the product we make will fit." And so now let's talk about how we connect this to ready to wear. So, you understand this process now of, we're asking these questions, we're producing this AI body scan. Well, now what we can do is we can map this to tech pack data. And so we have the chest measurement, we have the shoulder width, we have the bicep circumference, we have different measurements across the stomach, different measurements across the leg. And we can map that to the tech pack data so we can really match the technical designer's intended fit by design. But how does a customer actually wear it? And this is where we leverage machine learning to be able to look at the purchase and returns data and understand, okay, we've predicted based on the intended fit by design, but who's actually buying the clothes and keeping it? Who's buying it and returning it? And a lot of times what we find is maybe the size medium and large, that ends up matching the fit model pretty well. But what about the extra large or the double extra large or the extra small and the double extra small? And this is where this data is so fascinating. And by helping brands build up this AI body scan library of their customers, coupled with the data around how people are wearing the clothes, who's keeping it, who's returning it, it's incredibly powerful. And so, one of the ways that we deploy this is with our smart size chart, which is a solution that a number of brands use. Canada Goose is a great example where a customer is able to go to their site, answer our questions, and then we predict, we use our AI body scans to display their size, but also show, predict how it's going to fit on the body. Okay, where is it loose? Where is it tight? And so here's an example where, we're really going beyond a size recommendation and saying, okay, we think that the size 6 is the best size, and maybe over 80% of people buy that size. But for a consumer, fit preference is a very personal thing. And this allows somebody to go up a size and down a size and really pick the best size for them. And the results are, 21% reduction in return rate. And this all goes back to what I was talking about with sustainability, where we're really able to make an impact on how sustainable companies can be. With Tailored Brands, we're in over 650 of their stores nationwide. We've done over 80,000 AI body scans. And this was really critical for them during COVID because their stores closed, they reopened. But then, as we all know, measuring someone, especially like a chest measurement, you're almost hugging the customer. And so that's something people aren't very comfortable with. We were able to get our solution into all of these stores and produce AI body scans so that sales associates could, on their iPads, answer these questions that the customer had about their body, and then understand exactly what size they should wear, making a completely contactless experience for customers in store, and allowing Tailored Brands to build this incredible AI body scan library where now they know a lot about their customers' body shape and size, what clothes they're wearing, and there's so much they can do with that. Now, if you look at how all this ties together, this is where it gets pretty exciting when we're talking about 3D avatars and virtual dressing rooms. And this is all powered by our Body View solution. And so, imagine a customer being able to go to a site or be able to look on their iPad or in store and actually view their 3D avatar and compare sizes and look at what it looks like if they have heels on and provide a heat map to see where a garment is loose or tight on their body. Companies that have used this see a 20% conversion lift. And customers love doing this. They actually love trying on the clothes and playing around with different sizes. And so you see the time on site actually increase by over 2 minutes. And all of this ties together with Body View because what we're able to do is take the accuracy and scalability of our AI body scans, coupled with our size predictions, and our machine learning feedback loop, where we're able to understand who's keeping the garment, who's returning that, and using that to update the system. But then also tie in with visualization assets. And so, brands use a whole host of different things from DXF files to different CAD software, and we work with all of them. And so we can bring it all together because at the core of this is having the customer actually be able to create a 3D avatar of themselves, right? And I think, we've seen in the past where you create a estimate of, okay, well, this is someone that's like you. Maybe there's, 20 or 30 different profiles, but that's not going to give the customer a real understanding of how something fits. And so for us, we look at, AI body scanning being the core of really powering a, true to life 3D dressing room, but then supporting whatever the brands are currently using to make it seamless for brands to get their assets into this solution and then make it easy for customers to be able to try on different sizes, different styles, see how they fit, and really simulate that dressing room experience in 3D. And this is something that, wasn't possible a few years ago, and it's now possible. And then there's some really neat stuff you can do, right? So you talk about how do you make the avatar, more realistic, more true to life to the customer. And that's where, we have incredible partnerships with companies like Trimere that can do face mapping. So you could actually have the face of a customer put directly onto that avatar to make that 3D dressing room experience even more realistic and enable things like sharing with other people to get feedback and advice on what they think and actually have it look like them. And then, it's one thing to say, here's how something fits on you and here's where it's loose and tight. It's another to actually see it in 3D on your own avatar and understand, okay, well, here's the recommended size. And I can see, oh, it's a little tight in the waist. What if I go one size up? What if I go one size down and actually compare and contrast and decide a lot like I would in a dressing room? And then all of this ties together with Apparel Insights. And this is where we're essentially helping brands and technical designers build a 3D asset library for technical design insights. And so you're able to get insights on the body shape and size of your customers, what they're buying, what they're returning, and lots of really great statistics around, well, what is the, average body shape and size for the last 10,000 people that have bought my size medium or have bought my size large. And there's a ton of ways that brands are already using this, from updating their current sizing lines to updating the e-com photography, really a ton of ways to be able to leverage this. But we think in the future, every brand is going to have a 3D asset library of their shoppers. And the way that is going to impact both sizing, inclusivity, and sustainability is so powerful. And we're really excited just to be at the center of that movement. And so here's where it gets really cool. All right. Now let's look at how you're picking fit models today and how that's going to change with 3D avatars and AI body scanning. And so here's a great example of a size 52 fit model. All right, they have a 53-inch chest, a 48-inch waist. Well, what we're able to do is using our AI body scans, we can look at, well, what about the last 10,000 customers that bought a size 52? And as you can see here, the numbers are pretty different, right? The average customer buying a size 52 actually had a 49-inch chest, actually had a 42-inch waist, actually had a 46-inch hip. And it's one thing to show those numbers. It's another thing to actually be able to take that AI body scan that we generate and display it as a 3D avatar. What's really powerful about this is you can then take that 3D avatar and plug it into whatever software you're using, Clo, Browseware, Gerber, Optitech, and then look, okay, rather than using that fit model that was based on a guess of who the customer is, let's plug in the fit model that shows our actual customer that has bought products in this size and kept it. And as you can see here, the fit model that's being used for the 52R in this case was actually a much similar body shape and size to customers who bought a 56L. So it was pretty far off. And so we think, when you look at sizing inclusivity, this is a big and tall fit model, we're going to really be able to allow brands to leverage this data to update their sizing patterns, become more inclusive, and really provide a much better experience for brands when it comes to fit and sizing. Here's another great example. If you look at a size small fit model here, looking at that compared to the actual customer that buys a size small. And so you can see, well, the customer that buys a size small is actually a little bit bigger. They have a little bigger chest, a little bigger waist, a little larger hip circumference. And when you look at the actual fit model for the size small, well, that customer actually bought and kept a size extra small. And so, these are all examples of how having this feedback loop of not just making the garment and guessing who's buying it and using statistical standards or fit models or body blocks, but being able to feed data back in of, okay, who actually bought this and kept it? And can I actually use AI body scanning to get that 3D avatar into the design software I'm using? So you don't have to completely uproot your entire flow for designing products. You're able to actually just improve it by putting in more accurate data. This is something that is incredibly important also when you look at very tight fitted clothing that has a bit of elasticity to it. And so here's an example with stretch leggings where the technical designers looked at their size 8 fit model and they had an assumption around how they liked it to fit. And the general assumption was they want it to be tight, but not too tight. Well, then when you look at thousands and thousands of customers that bought the size 8 and kept it, what you find is actually customers like it to be a little more snug. You actually have a customer with a little bigger body measurements. As you can see from the heat map, they do like it a little tighter. And that's because this is a stretchier material. And these customers actually do have a fit preference to have it a little tighter. And so all of this, once again, just flows back into the design process so that you're actually designing for the customers that are buying it and actually how the customers are wearing those clothes. And so, putting this all together, what we're talking about here is really creating the first cyclical model of data flow to be able to build a 3D asset library of your shoppers so that you can finally complete the loop, right? Kind of going back to what I was saying in the beginning around sizing inclusivity. 68% of women essentially fall into the plus size category. That shouldn't be happening, right? We should be designing for the whole range of customers that are wearing our clothes. But without the feedback loop, it hasn't really been possible because you don't really know, okay, we're designing this based on all this data we have about who we think is wearing our clothes. And then you get it out there, but you don't know, is that actually who's wearing our clothes? We're enabling this feedback loop using AI body scans so that customers can build this 3D asset library of their customers, but then plug into their current workflow. So rather than uprooting your workflow and having to use completely different software and learn different techniques, all we're doing is supplementing it by saying, all right, great, let's take the last 10,000 customers that have bought this in this size and take that 3D avatar, plug it into your design software, and actually design for the customers that are buying your clothes and the fit preference they have. And we think the impact here is going to be fantastic when it comes to having a much more inclusive size range. And then in the end, really reducing returns, which is, massive improvement on the customer side. It's great for brands. And then more importantly than anything, it's great for the planet. So thanks so much. I tried to keep this as short as possible because I really want to answer your questions. If you have any questions for me that don't get answered, feel free to email me, morgan@boldmetrics.com. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Morgan. Great work. Really interesting stuff. And yeah, lots of questions to get into. So Let's get into some of the minutiae of it. The shoe size varies by 1.5 or 38 millimeters in length, depending on the brand.
Sure.
So do you use the longest shoe for that size?
Yeah, so one thing just to point out, when we're doing the prediction for the AI body scan, the shoe size is an input that goes into that. And so we're trying to make it as easy as possible for the consumer. So we would do, based on the brand that we're working with, the shoe size that matches, what they think their customer is most comfortable with, which could be either, an exact numerical size or within half size steps. And all those questions that go in to generate the AI body scan, we work with the brands to figure out what's the question set that's right for their customer, while really keeping in mind that we want to keep it as short and tight as possible, so that we're making it as frictionless as we can for an online shopper.
Okay, excellent. Who owns the data? Is it you guys, or is it the consumer, or is it the brand?
That's a great question. And actually, it's a really good question that dovetails into the panel that follows mine, that our CEO is going to be on, that's talking all about this.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting question that I think everyone is still trying to figure out. For us, we're relatively agnostic as for the brand ownership rights or the consumer ownership rights of that, because we're generating this AI body scan data and then really giving that power to the brand to build this 3D asset library of their customers. And then it's up to them, how they want to, provide access to that data, and how they think it would be best for their consumers to access that data. For us, we're really laser focused on, we want to make sure that brands have, accurate 3D avatars of their shoppers.
Mm. Yeah, it's a tricky question, I think, that spans all industries right now.
It's a great question. Yeah.
Yeah. If I mostly purchase men's clothing, so for instance, some people might actually purchase a different gender's clothing because it actually fits them better in their experience. How do you handle people who sort of purchase the other genders, let's say coats or t-shirts instead of their own?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And, this all ties back to what I was talking about when it comes to sizing inclusivity. I think sometimes sizing inclusivity, people forget that exact behavior is happening, and it's happening more and more. We actually work with a company that does like custom suits and tuxedos, but for people that have gone through gender transition. And so they're actually having to understand, how has the body changed? How do we make sure that our sizing is really inclusive? And that's really the power of an AI body scan, right? If you were just to ask somebody like, what's your favorite brand and what's your size in that brand, it'd be tough, right? Because you wouldn't get that data. But with the AI body scan, you actually have their exact body shape and size, all the dimensions across their body. And so that actually enables, if I'm a man that's shopping for women's clothing, if I'm a woman shopping for men's clothing, what really matters is my body shape and size, right? Because then, as long as I'm matching that to the tech pack data, or if I want to make a pattern, if I'm matching that to a custom pattern, then I'm able to get it really accurate regardless of gender. And we really think we're moving into a time where sizing inclusivity becomes so powerful that the AI body scan is at the core of that. And then the idea of having, gender assigned to clothing kind of goes away, because all that it matters is, how does it fit on your body and how do you want it to fit?
Yeah, yeah. Isn't it all a bit passé, this sort of, men's when
Exactly.
women's, it's more about body shape and fit?
That's exactly, we see, with AI body scans, we're finally able to progress the conversation where it's not about, is a man buying this or a woman buying it? This is their body. Let's get them something that fits great.
Yeah, 100%. How do you zero in on style shaping for fit? For plus women, especially, relating the style silhouette is needed.
Yeah. Really good point. This is something where we really work hand in hand with the technical designers, because, technical designers really put a lot of time and energy into making sure that they get this right and really understanding their customers' body shape and size as best they can. But what we find is, when we provide them this feedback loop, it actually helps solve that side of the problem, right? Is understanding, here's what we thought their body was like. Here's what we thought their silhouette looked like. Here's what we expected the air gap between their body and the garment to be. And then it's so fascinating to see when we're able to generate these AI body scans and provide, this 3D avatar library of their 3D body assets, they're able to look at that data and say, oh, interesting. The silhouette's a little different than I thought. And oh, the way they're wearing it, they like to wear it a little tighter here or a little looser there. And so we're finding they're actually using that data to update their silhouettes, to update their fit model and preference data. And so that loop really enables that entire process from the consumer seeing it and seeing their avatar in 3D to the designer being able to take that exact same consumer body data and plug it into their design software so they can update that as well.
Okay. Why are there discrepancies between the size of the model and the size of the purchaser?
Yeah, this all ties back to guessing, right? So, right now when a technical designer, and going back to that example of like the 52R, right?
Yeah.
Well, how do they come up with that fit model? Well, a lot of times what they're doing is they're looking at, statistical studies, they're looking at companies that produce fit models or body block data. And, the reality is different customers shop at different places, right? There may be one brand that has a different customer type than another brand that buys the same size, and they have different fit preferences. And so this is really, this is a great question because this is at the core of what we do, which is that, what we find more and more is that technical designers are getting this data and assuming, okay, well, I got this from an organization that does statistical studies and says, this is what the average person in America that wears a 52R, this is what their body looks like. And what's so fascinating to see is, what's the truth, right? And with AR body scanning, we can get to the truth. And so that may be what the statistical study shows, but, every single man in America isn't buying from them. There's a segment that's shopping from that brand. And so when we look at, okay, well, here's 10,000 people that have bought, a 52R, and here's their body shape and size, it's fascinating to see how, oh, wow, that's different from what the statistical standard was. And brands are seeing this more and more, especially as online shopping has really grown over the last year. They're finding that consumers are switching from one brand to another faster than ever. And that means that fit model data is becoming stale. And it's also just not segmenting for them, right? You're looking at statistical standards when what really happens is you have a very specific customer with a very specific fit preference, and that's changing over time. And we're allowing brands with these, AI body scans and 3D asset libraries to stay on top of that and update their fit models than with real customer body data.
Yeah, and this one really ties into that. Crystal asks if customers are accustomed to purchasing a size that doesn't fit on them, how have some companies optimized their base size to reflect that without driving up return rates based on the change?
That's a fantastic question. Yeah. And, this all comes back to body view and actually showing the customer how it fits, right? I think we're going to look back 10 years from now and say, wow, can you believe that we were selling things online and not actually showing customers how it fit on their bodies? And this is the biggest pain point for shoppers today, right? Is they say, oh, wait a second, I know I'm a small in this brand, but I'm a medium in this brand. And so, well, now if I try a new brand, which one am I, right? And what do? They buy both. They buy a small and they buy a medium because, like that stat I showed in the beginning, 88% of shoppers think that, oh, if I return it, that's fine, just goes back on the shelf, when really it's going to a landfill or an incinerator. And so, we think that we're going to see a tremendous shift, especially as all these customers have shifted online, where they're going to want to be able to do what they do in store, right? In store, customers rarely just like grab a size they think they wear and just walk out of the door. They go into a fitting room, they try it on, they hold it up to themselves. That same experience needs to be available online. And that's where you need to have AI body scanning and 3D avatars so that a customer that's in that exact situation, because this is such a great question, that exact situation where they say, well, I'm used to buying from this brand and I'm usually a medium. And then the brand comes out with a new style and they go, I wonder, am I still a medium in this? To be able to have them just press a button, answer some questions, and then see in 3D their body and see how it fits and go, oh, you know what? I actually would like it a little looser, a little tighter. That's where you end up really improving the customer experience and making it possible for customers to shop from a brand they haven't tried before or try new styles that they haven't before. And that's what we're seeing people do is, customers that are able to view this data, they buy more, they experiment more with brands, and they're really able to have a much more seamless and frictionless shopping experience online.
And how do you account for measurement inconsistencies by the consumers? Does your AI account for this in making the scan?
Yeah, another great question. Yes, and we've also done a lot of studies to understand, what questions can people answer reliably and where are they going to guess? And so a really good example is like a typical question set that we have for like men's suiting is going to be, like height, weight, jean waist, age, shoe size. But then also we may include optional questions like collar, sleeve, and chest. But, coming back to this question, what happens if they put in bad data? We really want to make sure that it says, under the like collar, sleeve, and chest. We know not everybody knows that. So we want to say, hey, this is optional. Only answer if you know, don't guess. But then we actually have a set of sophisticated algorithms to actually check those, because we have so much body data and we have so much information on, typical body shapes and size, atypical body shapes and sizes, how people wear clothes. We're able to put all that together. And so if somebody does put in measurements that don't look right, we're able to actually air check, update that. And so for the consumer, it's still seamless, but for us, we're able to provide really, really high accuracy to the brand so that that entire loop is completed.